Hello there and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video because I will be doing swatches and looks with the new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude Eyeshadow palette. This palette is so beautiful. When she first announced it over on Instagram, I knew for sure that this was one palette that I had to have. I've been trying, I should say, recently to be a little bit more selective about higher end eyeshadow palettes, especially ones at this price point. I try to think about it a little bit more before I jump. I didn't have to think with this one. I knew that I wanted it because I know it's a palette that I would be able to use all the time and probably on an everyday basis if need be, because it is what I love and I do adore neutral eyeshadow palettes. I feel like I could never have enough of them in my collection, and this one was of no exception. So there are 15 shades in this eyeshadow palette. I plan to do 3 looks with it and using all the shades, so each look will have 5 shades, because I did want to be able to sit down and say that I used every shade in the eyeshadow palette so I can give my really honest opinion on it, whether it's the Natasha Denona formula that I know and love. Also, I do know there are some new formulas in here when it comes to the shimmer shades, so I am really excited to try that out. I will have timestamps listed below because I will be doing swatches and things like that, like live swatches, and I will also be showing you the palette in natural lighting as well, so you can get a feel for the true colors of the palette. But if all of that sounds interesting, then let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to be doing some live swatches for you here of the new I Need a Nude palette from Natasha Denona. This is, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful palettes I've ever seen. I mean, it is just simply stunning. So I will be doing a couple of live swatches for you so you can see the quality of each different shadow. And then I'm going to show you the swatches in natural lighting outside so you can get a feel for the true color, because this ring light that I'm filming with might kind of change the true color of this a little bit. And there you have the shade Stone. Whisper, Ella, Vague, and then Travertine. And there you have the top row of this eyeshadow palette. Delilah, that shade swatch is really patchy. That's that silhouette shade. Let me swatch it again, see if I can. I don't know about that shade. I made sure my hand was... You know what, let me wipe that off. Because I did have micellar water, but I did make sure my hand was completely dry before I went back in with swatches. But let me wipe just that shade off and try that swatch again and just make sure my hand was fully dry, because I don't want to judge that shade unless I know for sure. So I'm going to give it a second chance. Alright, I made sure everything was fully dry. Let's try that silhouette shade again. Now, that shade, it is so dark in the pan. Let me try to build that up. It's doing the exact same thing, and my hand is fully dry. So I'm not sure about that shade. That's this shade right here in the palette. Let me try swatching it here. Still looks incredibly patchy. I know that some shades can look patchy in a swatch but then perform really nice on the eyes. At the time I am swatching these, I have not yet used that particular shade, but I'll give my final thoughts on it once I actually use it on my eyes, because that looks really bad. That does not look good at all. And I made sure that my hand was completely dry, and my hand that I'm swatching with as well was completely dry and didn't have any micellar water on it or nothing. And then the inside of my arm here had nothing on it, and it still looks pretty patchy. It looks better here than it does here, but it still doesn't look the best. So we'll move on from that shade and keep swatching. This is the shade Muse. This is the shade Fair. That one is close to my skin tone, but you can still see it. Let me build it up just a little bit so you can see the tone of that, because I know it kind of blends in with my skin a little bit. It's a really light, kind of like a peachy shade. Then we have the shade Filigree. That shade, that is so disappointing to see. But I'm hoping it'll perform better on the eyes. Wit. Sheen. Tender. Mesh. And Mia. Alright, we are going to start with the shade Mesh on a blending brush from e.l.f. And I'm going to start running that right into my crease. And just to say that I did allow a random generator pick out my shades for each look. Well, except for look 3, I just used the 5 that were left, but for look 1 and look 2, I let a random generator pick out the shades. I love doing that. It just kind of gives you some inspiration just to see how creative you can be with the shades it gives you. So that is what I will be working with today, but I wanted to make sure that I used every shade in this eyeshadow palette. I am just building up that Mesh shade just a little bit. And then on that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Tender. And I'm going to start pressing that on this outer portion of my lid, just to kind of have a little bit more depth in this outer corner. I like to press down the deeper shades first and then go back and blend them. So I'm going back in with an original brush I had. This is just a fluffy eye blender brush from e.l.f., but this is in their Cookies and Dreams packaging. But it is just one of their fluffy brushes. I'm just going to take that and blend around that edge. Okay, and then next I'm going in with the shade, I think you call this Travertine, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to take that on a flat brush from e.l.f. and I will be spraying my brush. Normally I would use my finger, but I really want a precise application, so I do want to use this brush. I'm just going to put that right here in the center portion. Felt like it matched that Tender shade on the outer corner a little better, so I thought it'd be perfect to put that one in the center first. And then I have another shimmer shade I'm going to go in on the beginning half of my lid. And on that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Muse. My lighting, when it wants to hit this palette directly, it messes it up, so I'm going to try to hold it this way now. So I'm going to hit this shade right here with that same brush. And then I'm going to pop that on the inner portion of my lid. This is definitely a more sparkly shade, so I sprayed my brush again just to keep it from going everywhere. I don't know how well it's picking up on camera, but it's very sparkly, very pretty. Okay, I'm just going to do my mascara and lashes off camera, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. Okay, I'm going back in with the shade Mesh on a detailed crease brush from e.l.f. And I'm going to run that on my lower lash line. I have one more shimmer shade to use, but I wanted to put down this matte shade first. Then on that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Whisper, and then I'm going to run that over that matte shade just for a little bit of sparkle on that lower lash line. And then I'm going back in with that shade Muse on that same brush, and I just want to pop that a little bit on this inner corner. And here are the eyes all done. So far so good with this eyeshadow palette, so stay tuned for look number 2. Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit differently, but this is my last filming day I have before I want this video to go up on Monday, so I'm going to do look 2 on this eye and then look 3 on this eye. But so my timestamps will make sense, I'm just going to do this eye completely first and then we'll start on that eye. But for the shades that it picked out for me to use today, only one matte shade, and that was this shade right here, Silhouette, which if you watched the swatches, you'll see that this was the only one that gave me any trouble. So I'm going to see how it performs today, in both in my crease and also on my actual lid. So we're going to start with that shade on a crease brush from e.l.f. Because it's a deep shade, I'm only going to dip in it maybe about twice. And we'll see if it performs patchy on the eyes, because it swatched incredibly patchy. But I know swatches can sometimes not be true to how an eyeshadow will perform. I'm not sure how it looks on camera, but so far it's not looking really all that patchy on the eye. Yeah, I like the way that's looking. I used just a small amount of it though, but I am going to really pack it on this outer corner in a little bit, so we'll see the true test of it then when I'm using full pigment. But it doesn't look like it's patchy in my crease, so that's good. So I guess it was just one of those shades that might swatch kind of odd, but it actually performs well. But I'm going back in that shade on a flat eyeshadow brush from e.l.f. And here's where I really picked up some of that pigment, and we're going to press it on this outer corner. Yeah, it is not looking patchy on the eye whatsoever, so I am really happy to see that. And I'm going to go back in with that crease brush that I was using and just start blending around that edge. So far so good with this shade. Using that same brush, I'm going in with the shade Filigree, and I will be spraying my brush with setting spray. And then I'm going to place that on the center of my lid, meeting up with that Silhouette shade. This shade has a little bit of chunkiness to it when it comes to the glitter, so that's why I wanted to spray my brush and press this shade down so I didn't get too much fallout everywhere. Okay, then I'm going in with the shade Mia on that same brush. I also sprayed that brush with setting spray too, and I'm going to pop that right here on this inner portion, overlapping that filigree shade. Okay, so I'm just going to put on mascara and a false eyelash, and I'll be right back to finish up the lower lash line on this side. Okay, the lash that I'm using is for my Ani. These are the 3D Foam Ink lashes in Wispy Spiky. This was just in their Zodiac Gemini packaging. So I'm going back in with that crease brush and going in with a tiny amount of the shade Silhouette. I just dipped into that shade once, and I'm going to run that on my lower lash line. I am so happy that this shade is performing nicely on the eyes. And then I'm going in with the shade Ella, taking that same flat eyeshadow brush from before, and I sprayed that brush as well, and I'm going to run that on the outer half of my lower lash line. Going in with the shade Sheen, and I sprayed my brush as well, and I'm going to put that on the beginning portion of that lower lash line. Popping a little of that in the inner corner. Okay, and there is look number 2. Alright, I'm first going to start out with the shade Fair on a blending brush from e.l.f. Now, this shade is mostly my skin tone, so I'm just kind of lightly just running that all over my lid, kind of even all the way up to that brow bone as well, because this shade's just really close to my skin tone. There's just a slight peachiness to it. So I figured I could just kind of use this shade as more of like a setting shade for my eyeshadow primer. Also, I haven't been showing this, but because I did show swatches of the palette before I started the looks, but I did have to show. This was the color scheme that it picked out for this look, and this is totally my vibe. These 5 shades are so beautiful. Okay, I'm going to take a crease brush from e.l.f. and going in with the shade Wit. And I'm going to start running that in my crease. It's really weird filming this eye. This is usually the eye that I don't film. I just cut out this part, so it's strange being over on this side. I'm going in with the shade Vague on an eyeshadow C brush from e.l.f. and start stamping that on this outer corner. I want to keep the same shape as the other eye. Even though these are two different looks, I want to keep that same shape. And then I'm going back in with that crease brush, and I'm just going to start going around that edge. And then taking a concealer brush from e.l.f., I'm going in with the shade Delilah, and I will be spraying my brush. And then I'm going to place that all over the beginning portion of my lid. Okay, so I'm just going to do my mascara and then put on the other lash from over here on this side, and I'll be right back to do the lower lash line. I'm going in with the shade Stone on a crease brush from e.l.f. This is the last shade in the palette that I have not used. I'm just going to run that on my lower lash line. And here is look number 3. Okay, this is take 2 of my outro and a completely different day. I had some technical difficulties in this video. I know that my microphone cut out 2 different parts, but luckily it was just really small segments of the video, so I'm hoping it won't be too annoying for you, but I do apologize for that. But my outro completely had also messed up, so I just wanted to come back on here and re-record my outro, so I don't know what happened, but we're just going to try this again. Now, the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, I really do enjoy and I adore this palette. I've been using it every day since I did get it in the mail. The 3 looks I did for my video, as well as about 3 more times since then. I'm wearing it again today in my outro. I'm just using the shades Mesh, Stone, and Muse. That's the only shades I have on my lid today, and I just really love this palette. Now, do you need this eyeshadow palette? Of course not. I would never tell anyone they need a certain makeup product, but if you are someone who loves neutrals, you're willing to splurge for the $69 price point, and this is a palette that has colors that you would get a lot of use out of, then I don't think you'd be disappointed with the quality, because the quality is there, and these are really nice eyeshadows. So all in all, I'm really happy to have it in my collection, and I know that it sold out on Sephora. I'm not sure by now if it's back in stock. I will have 3 different retailers listed and linked for you below: Sephora, Ulta, and also the Natasha Denona website, just in case maybe if it's not available on Sephora still, you can find it through those other links. And if you are curious about what's on the rest of my face, I will have all of that linked for you below. So thank you so very much for watching. I hope that you did enjoy today's video, and if you did, I hope you will please consider commenting, liking, subscribing. It truly means the absolute world to me, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!